ERG leaders be paid? That is today's question. This is a really emotive topic, and so that is what we're going to be diving in. Should ERG leaders be paid money, pounds, dollars, coins? Okay, that's what we're talking about. So I am Cheryl Miller, and this is ERG Strategy, the channel that helps you build engaged, effective employee resource groups and communities that make an impact. So if this is what you're interested in, please do subscribe. We put out videos every Tuesday, and I go live on a Friday, 8:30 UK time here and on LinkedIn. So please do subscribe, hit the notification bell if you want to know when videos are going live, and give us a thumbs up if this is the sort of thing you are interested in. So what am I going to be covering today? I'm going to be covering a lot of stats, right? So if you hear paper rustling, it's because we've got a lot of facts and stats to get through. So I'm going to be looking at what is going on. What is the average? Are people getting paid? Is it just you that's not getting paid? Let's see. Right, so we're going to do what do the stats say? Then I'm going to talk about, well, what does your organisation usually do for people that go above and beyond? Then I'm going to look at what are the options for getting recognised, because it's not just necessarily about money. So what are the options for getting recognised? Then I'm going to talk about how to make sure that you at least get recognised in your performance reviews. And then I'm going to leave you with some action to take. So let's get into these statistics. First of all, big caveat with these stats, because there isn't actually a lot of good data when it comes to employee resource groups. It's one of the reasons that we did our own survey in 2025 of ERG leaders, because for some reason there just hasn't been that much good data. There hasn't been that much surveying of the ERG community, right? So I'm taking some stuff that is out there on the internet, but I can't vouch for how accurate it is unless it's the survey that we did. Okay, so first of all, ERG leader compensation. So according to a website called Senior Executive, in 2020 only 6% of ERG leaders received financial compensation, but according to them that figure rose to 46% by 2022. Now I'm fairly certain that this is skewing towards the US, so that's just the first caveat. And I think also that if this survey was now done in 2025, I don't think it would be the same. My guess is that in 2022 you had, more of the kind of the conversation on the back of 2020 and George Floyd and all of that, which probably then led to more compensation for ERGs, right? What is the average compensation amount? Well, according to a website called Mentor Click, although they typically are just repeating what other surveys have done, slight caveat there. They said that the average annual amount was $2,000. However, there was another website, which is Boston College, and they said that it was actually slightly higher. I mean, they said that LinkedIn were paying their ERG global co-chairs $10,000 a year. That's not insignificant. And then there are some other organisations that were quoted as well. So a little bit of a difference, shall we say, in terms of how much are people being compensated. When it comes to time commitment, and this is something that I'll get into in terms of our survey, approximately 46% of ERG leads dedicate at least 3 hours per week to their ERG responsibilities. So, and that kind of, so we're talking about roughly half a day a week. It's not insignificant. It's fair to say. Okay, so what did our survey say? Our survey said, in terms of the amount of time that people are spending on ERG-related activities, 71% of people said they were spending 2 to 5 hours. So 71% of our ERG leaders, we had over 100 ERG leaders reply to our survey, and that's ERG leaders predominantly from the UK and the US, but some other countries as well, said that they were spending roughly half a day. And when we asked them whether they are compensated financially, only 13%, 13% of our ERG leaders said they were compensated, and 87% of them said no. I mean, if we look at the bonuses, so let me just get into that, because obviously bonus is still compensation. 22% said that their ERG responsibilities are recognising their bonus objectives, right? So you could say actually, arguably 22% are being compensated, okay? So those are the stats, right? So the summary of that is most ERG leaders are not financially compensated. And that in itself does spark a lot of debate. In fact, there are some people that even think the work of ERGs itself is inequitable. They're kind of like, these are groups that have been, underrepresented, marginalized, discriminated against. Why do they even have to do the work of trying to improve organizations, right? So there's a whole other piece about that. Maybe I'll do a video on that in future. If you want me to do a video on that, whether it's even, kind of moral that ERGs actually exist, let me know. But let's get on to what I want to get on to. The first thing that you need to think about, if, for example, you're running a very large ERG, and there are some ERGs out there that are huge, and they're almost like mini organizations within an organization. There's like a whole, some of them even have a chief of staff for the ERG. Like, that's literally how big they are, some of these global ERGs. So the first thing that I want you to think about is, what does your organisation usually do for people that volunteer for things on top of their day job? That's the first thing you need to consider. So that could be, projects or programs or strategic initiatives or campaigns. So when somebody does something, they volunteer, they put their hand up and say, I want to get involved in that, and it leads to additional work. What does the organisation typically do? Do they get any additional salary for a fixed period of time? Do they get an allowance? Do they get an extra bonus? What exactly happens? It might be tricky for you to find out, what actually happens, because sometimes some of these things are agreed behind closed doors and they're not always talked about. So the person potentially to ask that might know actually is either your HR lead, so your HR business partner or anybody in HR that is assigned to you as an ERG, or if you know who your HR business partner is for your area of the business, you could speak to your HR business partner, and they may or may not tell you. The other person you could speak to is the exec sponsor. They may know because they probably sponsor other things, and they could also potentially raise it. So they could, try to make sure that there is consistency. They could ask some of their other sponsors that are sponsoring projects and programs, what are we doing for people when they volunteer? So that's the first thing to do. You need to find out whether, there is kind of common practice that when somebody does volunteer for something above and beyond day job, do they get compensated or not? The next thing is thinking about the options or, the alternatives to, for example, the pound or the dollar in terms of compensation. So it doesn't necessarily have to be about sort of like salary. There could be other things. There are other ways of compensating individuals. So obviously I've talked about bonus, and that's a good one because often in, if you're in an organisation that has bonuses, often bonuses are for, doing a good job in your day job, but often also for going above and beyond. And obviously ERG work typically is going above and beyond your day job. So I think bonuses actually are a really good place to be rewarding for ERG work. Whether or not you're going to get like a higher bonus or necessarily a higher, sort of bonus opportunity, so for example, if it's in your contract that you get a 10% bonus, I don't know whether anybody's going to say, okay, you're now eligible for a 15% bonus. I'm not sure it's going to work like that, but you may be able to potentially get a higher bonus score, right, in terms of the proportion of that bonus that you can get. So that's something else to think about. The other thing is if your organisation tends to use just other things to recognise and reward people, and that might be things like gift cards. I mean, many, many years ago, I worked in an organisation, it was American owned, but they used to give away things like holidays as rewards, right? Especially if, if it was to individuals that have been working particularly hard, working lots of overtime, they used to give away holidays. And I know actually some organisations do that now, particularly in like sales organisations, I want to say. Anyway, so there may be other things that you can get access to. It doesn't necessarily have to be additional salary. But again, do some investigating. Try to find out, how are other people being rewarded for going above and beyond? That's the question. How are people being rewarded for going above and beyond? The other thing is time, and I am aware of some organisations that do this. So they almost like formalise the fact that, okay, you can have, 2 days a month to work on your ERG, or, half a day a week or whatever it is to work on ERG work. Now, that kind of all sounds great in practice, but there is something about you. First of all, you've got to have your line manager signed up to that as well. But also, I kind of think that you need to therefore be able to deliver less outputs, right? Because if you're still expected to deliver the same level of output, but somebody's just sort of saying, oh, you've got more time to do your ERG work, it's not going to work, is it? So there has to be some give somewhere, if you're going to be officially given time. But being officially given time, as long as, you're not then expected to deliver the same level of output, I think that's probably a fair trade. That is almost the same as getting salary. So that's an opportunity. If you think that, things are a bit tight at your business and you think it's unlikely that you'll get something financial, maybe agree something in terms of time and hours, right? The other thing that it might be worth thinking about is development. Your own development. You as an ERG leader, but not just as an ERG leader, your development in your day job, right? Think about the sorts of things that would really help you in terms of progression in either your day job, or if, for example, you are thinking of going down the road of moving into, say, DEI more full-time. Think about things like training courses or, mentoring or shadowing that you can be given in order to progress your career, and almost like formalize the fact that, for example, if you're doing an ERG leadership role for 2 years, get it recognized that at the end of the 2 years, you want to have a formal conversation about your next move, almost like formalize that you are going to be looking for, progression or a promotion formally. And therefore, if you need some training to be ready for that promotion, get it agreed up front and get on that course, whatever that course might be. It could be, project management. It could be contract negotiation. It could be, I don't know what. But, if there's something that you think could help get you to the next level, and obviously this is in conversation with your line manager, maybe now is the right time to ask for that training. Maybe, ask for that MBA or whatever it is that you want the investment that you want in yourself, right? The other thing that I want to talk to you about, because I think this is almost like, for me, this is the benchmark. You need to be getting your ERG work into your performance objectives. If it's not, I don't know why it's not. I'm just going to put it like that. And I know that it's not necessarily that common, because I know when we did the survey of ERG leaders, only 52% said that their ERG responsibilities contribute to performance reviews. I was quite surprised at that, because I think this is a no-brainer. I think if you are doing anything in the name of the organisation, it doesn't matter that it's not part of your day job, it should absolutely be part of your performance review objectives. So, if it's not currently, and you have, when you have your next conversation with your line manager, assuming that you have one-to-ones, etc., or you might have a quarterly conversation or a 6-monthly conversation, you need to raise it. You need to say, these are the kinds of things that I'm doing in my ERG work, and these are some of the transferable skills that I'm developing, and this is how it's helping me in my day job. I need to have this work recognised in my performance review objectives. And actually, by doing that, if your ERG work is included in your performance review objectives, then it actually contributes to your pay rise, assuming that your pay rise is attached to individual performance. I know that in some organisations it isn't necessarily, especially if you are in, for example, a unionised organisation. But for many people, especially if you are manager level and above, your score in your performance reviews, your performance evaluation, does contribute to your salary potentially, right? So by getting your ERG work recognised in your performance reviews, that's how potentially you get some financial compensation. If you get pushback from that, if you get pushback from your line manager about that, I would raise it with your HR business partner, your DEI lead, and potentially with your sponsor as well, because this is the sort of thing that they can be supporting you with. In that conversation, particularly if you know it's going to be a difficult conversation, I would go in with data. So if you've managed to find out what else is going on in the organisation and how other people are being compensated for things like projects, programmes, and when they volunteer for extra work, take that information in with you. And then in terms of the ERG work, the data that you need is, what is the business impact? You need to be going in with not just, we have this calendar of events, and I ran this day and we had, food and fun for this and we did this. You want to be going in with, and this is the benefit to this organisation. That makes it easier for you to then be recognised in the performance review. I can't tell you how much of an issue that is. You'd be amazed how many ERGs I speak to, and when I talk to them, in fact, so I'll give you an example. In getting ready for the ERG Leader Summit in London, I was talking to quite a few ERG leaders actually, and I was trying to draw out some case studies of really amazing things that they'd done in their organisations. And you would be surprised the amount of ERGs that go straight to, oh, we had an awareness day then, or we did that. And, and I'm kind of sitting waiting for, and what was the impact? What's the, so what? What was the impact of that? So, as ERG leaders, you need to get more used to talking about your ERG in terms of the impact and the benefit to the business. And so when you're going into conversations like this around, potentially being financially recognised or compensated or having your ERG work recognised in your performance reviews, you've got to tie it into business impact 100%. So I hope that's clear. I know I've laboured that point, but it's really important, especially in this current climate of DEI backlash, right? The whole DEI business case is under attack, and we've got to be able to prove the business benefit of these things, not just the kind of the moral case of it's the right things to do. We've got to prove that these things have business benefit, which they absolutely do. Okay, that's it for today. If you have got any questions, if you want any particular practical advice, please do leave a comment below. If you want to get in touch with me, because maybe you don't want to ask a question publicly, then connect with me on LinkedIn and you can send me a DM there. That's probably the best place to do that. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you on Friday with another LinkedIn Live. That's it for today. Go with grace. Bye.